Ever built a Power App where the relationships got so tangled you wondered if you were mapping out a business process or building a spaghetti monster? You're in the right place. Today we're breaking down Dataverse beyond just tables and columns, so you can finally connect those dots and avoid the chaos of custom logic gone wild. If you've ever watched your Dataverse app grind to a halt the moment your dataset hits 4 or 5 digits, you're definitely not alone. It's a weird rite of passage. Your first Dataverse app hums along with its nice little tables and columns. Everything seems under control, and then out of nowhere, the numbers climb, users multiply, and you're stuck figuring out why a screen that took 2 seconds to load yesterday now just spins forever. It happens fast. The thing is, nearly everyone starts the same way. Pick your tables, drop in some columns, and the basic CRUD, create, read, update, delete stuff just works. Maybe you even manage to get a view or two whipped up for reporting. But then reality checks in. The business wants automation. Leadership asks for better dashboards. Compliance wants audit history. And users expect integrations with that ancient ERP system they haven't updated since 2008. All those requests pile up. It's no longer just add a column. You're roped into building approval flows, validation rules, maybe a custom import job for weekly uploads. Before you know it, your clean little app looks like it's been held together by duct tape and sticky notes. For every business rule that's missing from out of the box, someone's stuck copying values between fields, manually monitoring overdue items, or chasing missed updates. These quick fixes pile up. One Power Automate here, a patchwork of scripts there, and suddenly every new requirement tips the app one step closer to breaking. Here's a real-world scenario for you. A mid-sized company rolled out Dataverse to handle sales quoting. 10 reps loved it. Lookups worked, quotes generated, everything flowed. But as they started hiring and shifted from 10 to 100 users, performance tanked. Searching for quotes took ages, reports spun forever, and the once simple logic for discount approvals spiraled into a web of overlapping rules. Suddenly, the quoting tool wasn't just buggy, it became a source of daily complaints. Teams tried to patch things, slapping extra Power Automate flows on top, running exports to Excel for formulas, even building little workarounds in Teams chat to track exceptions. The more they added, the more unpredictable the results became. Simple changes started having ripple effects nobody expected. The hard truth, most Power Apps that break under growth weren't really set up to scale. They're built with the spreadsheet mindset. It works fine when you're a 5-person team or just experimenting, but spreadsheets are designed for quick wins. You add a value, get a result, and if something breaks, you can usually spot the error in a cell pretty quickly. Dataverse isn't meant for that. It's a backend system, and it expects structure, clear relationships, automated flows, and rules that the system, not a person, enforces day in, day out. Let's put it another way. Imagine running an entire shipping company by handing sticky notes to the warehouse team and CCing everyone on every update. It might work the first week, but give it a month, add a few new routes, and boom, missed deliveries and lost shipments. The same mess happens in Dataverse if all you focus on is throwing more tables or fields at a problem. When a single piece of information goes missing, or when automation doesn't kick in at the right moment, your app falls apart in ways that a spreadsheet rarely does. You end up firefighting, tracking down where rules got skipped, figuring out which imports duplicated records, or hunting for the reason someone's dashboard isn't matching the report from last week. So what's actually missing from most Dataverse builds? It's rarely just more tables. Growth exposes the gaps in how you structure relationships, where you automate the logic, and how your app keeps the right data in sync. Dataverse has all the pieces, custom tables, relationships, calculated columns, alternate keys. But if you only use the basics, you're basically stacking up dominoes and hoping nobody sneezes. It's how those pieces connect and talk to each other that turns a fragile tool into something that quietly handles scale, complexity, and all those inevitable what-if scenarios the business throws your way. The difference between an app that barely works and one that grows with your company always comes down to the foundation. Think of advanced Dataverse components like custom logic, calculated fields, alternate keys, and deep relationships as guardrails and gears. Used early, they quietly keep things running as business changes. Wait until chaos hits and you're left cleaning up the mess, merging orphaned records, or fielding angry calls because approvals went missing. But simply adding more features, another field here, a shiny view there, won't save you when core relationships and logic aren't aligned. That's where the real magic of Dataverse comes to life. When you build those connections in, and automation happens naturally, there's a huge difference between layering in features after things break and weaving them into how your system works from the start. Let's get into the mechanics of how advanced components actually hold everything together and form the kind of Dataverse app that doesn't fall apart the minute someone asks for a new report. Because building a resilient system isn't about more features, it's about smarter connections. Custom logic, the heartbeat of intelligent Dataverse apps. Ever used an app and thought, wow, this thing just knows what I need, while another app just sits there until you click a field or press save? That's always the gap. Real business software needs a brain, not just a form. Most of that brain power is custom logic hiding under the surface. Out of the box, Dataverse gives you lists, lookups, and the CRUD basics, which gets your app off the ground. For basic needs, that's fine. But business never stays simple for long. Once the requests start rolling in, real-time validation, nuanced approval rules, calculated notifications, it becomes clear that spreadsheets and simple forms can't keep up. Here's what trips everyone up. It's tempting to bolt on your logic with Power Automate or just sprinkle in some plugins after the core tables are live. It's fast, especially the first time you throw together an automated task or a quick fix. But the more you rely on ad hoc flows and scripts, the more unpredictable your app becomes. Now, you're living with automation that fires at the wrong times, business rules that trigger inconsistently, and behaviors nobody can explain, especially when it all happens outside Dataverse's main data model. I've seen sales departments hit with overdue invoice alerts that show up out of nowhere, or worse, don't show when they should. All because you wired up a Power Automate flow, but forgot about all the cases where an invoice is edited, voided, or marked as paid through another process. When business logic sits outside the model, it's a recipe for confusion. A workflow might behave one way if a user updates a record in Dynamics 365, but another way if changes happen behind the scenes via API. Miss an edge case, and suddenly finance is hunting down why an invoice got flagged twice or missed a step altogether. This isn't just academic, it rolls downhill, creating real pain for support teams, IT admins, and anyone who's stuck troubleshooting weird intermittent bugs. There's also the issue of transparency. With floating, untracked automation, nobody really knows which rules fire when. Teams end up with flow charts on whiteboards, sticky notes to remember manual checks, or wiki pages trying to catalog which plugins or business rules might interact on a given table. That's why the strongest Dataverse apps treat their custom logic as part of the actual data model. Plugins, workflows, and business rules aren't just afterthoughts. They're system components, almost like wiring or plumbing in a well-built house. Start with a plan for your logic, and you're saving yourself hours of rework later. Try to add it in after the house is finished, and suddenly everything is messier, costlier, and way more prone to leaks. It's funny. Everyone thinks you're cutting corners by getting to MVP first and circling back for smarter logic once business takes off. But when that wave hits, the cracks show immediately. You see duplicated efforts, misfired notifications, and those endless Slack threads where everyone debates why data moved, if it moved at all. The difference between bolted-on logic and first-class logic isn't just about predictability. It's about maintainability. Need to expand your approval process to include international teams? If your workflow started as inline integrated logic, you just adjust a rule or tweak a condition. If your automation is scattered across a dozen Power Automate flows or hidden in JavaScript, you're tracking down which one needs the update and hoping you don't break another branch. And forget about onboarding a new admin. When logic is baked right into the Dataverse model, it's visible, auditable, and way easier to train someone on. There's no mystery layer hiding the business rules. Everything sits right inside the tables and forms, just where you'd expect to find it. Imagine the alternative. Layering your logic on last is like building a beautiful house, only to realize you forgot the pipes until after the roof is on. Every hole you drill after the fact makes the place a little weaker and a lot harder to fix. It's not just a mess for you either. Your users feel it. They deal with unexpected pop-ups, inconsistent validation, or workflows that break because the latest patch wasn't tested everywhere logic lives. The catch, of course, is that good logic can't overcome bad structure. Even the smartest rule fails if your tables are scattered or your relationships are a mess. Every approval engine, validation, or roll-up calculation relies on a clear foundation to refer to the right data at the right time. Otherwise, all you're doing is automating chaos. faster. And that's why the best Dataverse architects start with the relationships, map out the automation, and make every step an intentional part of the data model itself. Give custom logic a seat at the table from day one, and you set yourself up for smooth upgrades. Apps that bake in rules and workflows from the start don't melt down the moment a business policy changes. Instead, they flex and adapt because you've built a system, not stitched together a patchwork of fixes. And while it's tempting to think of calculated fields or automated roll-ups as little add-ons, the real power is what happens when they're woven right into the model itself, automatically driving those decisions you once had to babysit. Let's see how calculated fields and roll-ups take this further, giving you business automation without the spaghetti of scripts or disconnected flows. That's where those subtle system design choices start to pay off in ways you actually notice every single day. Calculated fields and advanced relationships, the glue that holds it together. If you've ever set up a calculated field thinking you're saving time, you're not alone. Most teams see them as shortcuts. You want to track simple things, remaining days, commission amounts, KPIs, so you toss in a quick formula and move on. The trouble is these fields are not just there for convenience. They end up as a quiet backbone for business logic, running behind the scenes and quietly handling the math, scoring, compliance flags, and revenue figures everyone depends on. They look simple until one day something stops adding up. A field shows 0 when you know it should be 12, or that monthly dashboard goes lopsided right after someone edits data on a related table. Then comes the audit trail, the fishing expedition, and the realization that the logic you thought was automated has a blind spot. Most of the time, that blind spot isn't in your formula. It's in the relationships between your tables. This is the part most teams don't spot until it trips them up. Calculated fields do their job right up until the underlying data model shifts or a relationship gets missed. Suddenly, updating a parent account doesn't flow down to a related opportunity, sales totals lag, and frontline users get different numbers in the app than they see in their exports. Reporting meetings turn into debates over where numbers come from and why they don't match. That lost connection can throw off more than just totals. It quietly throws off trust, one dashboard at a time. Let's take a real example. In retail, teams often need to see daily sales tallies at every location and roll those up into a regional scorecard. On paper, it's a classic calculated field job. You want Dataverse to tally the sales from each store into a sum for the region. But that only works if those stores are properly linked to regions in the database. If a region assignment changes, or if a new store isn't mapped in the hierarchy, your region-level numbers freeze or go blank. Your leader shows up to the Monday meeting asking why the Northeast sales report shows nothing, and you're digging through table relationships trying to spot what got missed. These headaches don't just slow down reporting, they ripple through budgets, commission payouts, even compliance filings if someone's relying on the wrong totals. The thing a lot of folks miss is that these calculated and roll-up fields are deeply tied to the structure of your data relationships. If you miss a connection, Dataverse can't pull the right records, and suddenly you've got silent data errors, no warning, no pop-up, just bad results. The scariest problems are the ones you don't even notice for weeks because you trust the automation to handle it. It's like plugging your GPS in for a road trip and not realizing half the roads aren't mapped. One missed connection and you find yourself stuck, lost, or circling back. With Dataverse, that means dashboards that drift out of sync with real performance, opportunities that hang in limbo, or KPIs that quietly slip wrong for an entire quarter. Now, compare this with trying to do the math manually, updating spreadsheets, double-checking totals, or writing custom scripts to recalculate numbers every night. It's slow, people miss things, and the odds of human error multiply with every touch. Meanwhile, calculated fields, when wired upright, update instantly, run automatically, and show clear audit trails whenever something changes. You get a record not only of what changed, but why it changed, and that's a lifesaver when you're explaining results or tracking down a hiccup after a go-live. That's the real power here, system-level automation that runs in sync with your structured relationships, giving you live, accurate numbers without manual wrangling or last-minute fixes in Excel. But, and this is a big caveat, it only pays off if you pay attention to your relationships up front. Treat the data model like a hierarchy that business logic depends on. Sketch it out so you know which entities tie together, where data flows, and which field looks to which parent record for its context. Build your calculated and roll-up fields on top of that solid foundation, and you get something that stays correct, even as the business grows, changes regions, or adds new products. One of the biggest benefits to this approach is in scalability. If next month you add 10 new stores or spin up a new line of business, your totals roll up automatically. You're not patching the numbers after the fact or building a special report on the side. It all just runs all inside Dataverse with your rules front and center. But reality check, none of this works if your data isn't mapped right from the beginning. Calculated fields tied to weak relationships deliver incomplete, misleading, or just plain wrong numbers. System-driven rollups are scalable and auditable, while DIY manual logic always comes back to bite you, especially when you're in the middle of a monthly close or prepping for an audit. So type mapping feels like maintenance upfront, but it means less firefighting later. And with good alignment, your business data essentially updates itself, a living backbone behind every dashboard and workflow. Things keep moving and your team finally trusts the numbers on screen. Of course, automation is only half the battle. Even perfect logic can stumble if you start with messy, mismatched data. And that's the next wall a lot of Dataverse projects hit. How do you bring in data from old systems without breaking everything else in your carefully built model? Alternate keys, solving the data import and integration headache. If you've ever tried importing data into Dataverse and wound up staring at a batch of duplicate records, or worse, a web of orphaned lookups, you know the pain. Even when you take every precaution, mismatches and lost connections seem to sneak in. Everyone hits this wall eventually, whether it's a one-off import from an ancient CRM or regular data syncs with a dusty ERP system that was likely built before cloud even meant anything. The open secret? Dataverse expects its records to play by the rules. So when your incoming data doesn't have clear, unique links, even the most basic integration project can spiral into chaos. Most businesses need to import, migrate, or sync records at some point. It sounds straightforward until you realize that the primary key system inside Dataverse, those long opaque UIDs, aren't going to match anything from your old system. Sure, it's technically possible to bring data in and try manual lookups later, but as datasets grow, that approach quickly reveals its limits. You end up trying to identify records using combinations of name, date, or maybe a legacy identifier no one is sure about. A missed character here, a mismatched field there, and suddenly you've created twin records for a single entity, or worse, broken all the relationships meant to tie your data together. It's cleanup purgatory. Let's walk through a real scenario. A manufacturing firm wants to import a decade's worth of supplier records as the foundation for automating inventory and procurement. Their legacy system used vendor codes, short human-friendly values that show up everywhere from invoices to warehouse labels. These codes were never imported into Dataverse, so when it came time to migrate, every supplier record was assigned a shiny, unique guide. On paper, that seems fine. The problem shows up fast. When inventory records, purchase orders, or compliance documents arrive, they reference only those familiar vendor codes. Without a way to connect the dots, every integration run becomes a guessing game. Some suppliers get matched, others get duplicated, and a few new mystery vendors slip into the mix, all because there's no systematic way to recognize records as the same entity across systems. This is where alternate keys step up. Instead of forcing everything to use those inscrutable GIDs, you tell Dataverse, this field here, maybe vendor code, maybe email address, is a unique real-world identifier. Match records on this, not just the system key. Now, every time you import or sync data, Dataverse checks the alternate key first. Found a match, the record updates, no duplicate. Didn't find it? Clean insert, with relationships preserved. It's the difference between a controlled, repeatable process and a never-ending scavenger hunt for duplicates and orphans. Alternate keys change the entire integration game. Suddenly, regular data syncs don't feel like rolling the dice. Instead of hand-checking thousands of rows after an import or patching relationships with Power Automate after the fact, you rely on Dataverse to enforce uniqueness. So that means fewer headaches, no more downstream reports with random unknown supplier entries, and no accidental splits of what should be unified records. The most overlooked risk, silent data corruption, drops off dramatically because Dataverse can flag a true conflict or reject a problematic insert before it causes headaches down the road. There's a bigger lesson here. The most successful architects don't build alternate keys around technical record IDs or numbers nobody outside of IT understands. They look for business identifiers, the values that exist on invoices, badge IDs, email addresses, or supplier codes printed on packaging. When you design with these identifiers in mind, the whole organization benefits. You're not just fixing integrations, you're enforcing real-world validation at the system level. Someone changes a supplier name, the code still matches. Emails get updated, the email address, set as an alternate key, keeps everything in sync. No more scrambling to find which John Doe was meant in an import or wondering which Acme Corp is the live one. If you've ever worked with imports that use default IDs, you already know the pain. You get messy spreadsheets, split data, or dozens of nearly identical records that later need merging. It's an administrative slog, and it's easy to lose confidence in the system. Now, run a similar job with alternate keys designed around real business needs. Dataverse steps in with automatic checks, and your relationships, parent-child, lookups, roll-ups, stay strong. It's like giving every employee a badge number when they first walk through the door. Even if two people share a name or job title later, you always know who is who. And alternate keys aren't just about cleaning up after imports. They are a foundation for automation at scale. Want to hook up a nightly feed from SAP, push in customer updates from Salesforce, or keep two business units in sync without human intervention? Alternate keys make it possible, predictable, and low stress because every system can reference the real world identity, not some internal number. The net effect is freedom. Freedom to scale integrations without multiplying technical debt, to backfill legacy data without introducing hidden mistakes, and to automate the flows that would be far too risky otherwise. You stop worrying if your next import will break something, so you can focus on building real features. So alternate keys often go unnoticed, but they're quietly responsible for some of the cleanest, most reliable data models in Dataverse. With that core sorted out, the natural question is how all these bits, relationships, logic, automation, keys, come together not just to avoid disaster, but to actually build apps with staying power. If you've ever patched together another Power App, hoping this one won't collapse as the business grows, here's what most people miss. The individual features, fields, keys, automation, aren't enough. Resilience comes from hooking these parts together so the system lives and breathes with your business, not against it. Scaling up isn't about checking a list of features, it's knowing how every dependency, lookup, and rule works as part of a living ecosystem. Drop that spreadsheet mindset and design with the next year in mind. Everyone wants apps that just work. Few take the time to build ones that last.